That's the best I can do is be myself.
Hi, Gail.
Hi, Scott. This is Free Range, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the show, and we'll talk about a variety of things. And Scott, please take the
Feel
show.
free. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't just take the show. You're the host.
I know, but you're the one with all the wonderful information to share. That's what I mean.
Well, hold on a second. I'll do what a friend of ours, Hannah, calls doing a Hollywood. I just straighten out my hair. That's doing a Hollywood,
Oh, really?
Anyway.
Okay.
What hair I have, so it's all right.
And then they're supposed to tell us to break a leg too. That's one.
I don't ever use that. That's
crazy, isn't it? I never.
Yeah, how is that encouraging?
I don't know.
No, thank you. So yeah, that's not a good imagination. I know people mean it well, but and they do that, but it's usually said to people on stage.
Yes, that's
kind
true.
of thing. Yeah. I don't know where that came from. It doesn't seem like a very good.
I know. I don't either. That's what I said when they tell me. I was like, what? Where did that come from?
They say that to me, and they say, "No, thank you. I'm not going to do that."
That's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, do you mean do well? Why don't you say
do well?
Great job. Do well. Have fun. Be successful. Something like that.
Exactly.
That's just a jargon thing.
Well,
So
we have a lot of.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say we have a lot of things going on the planet right now. I hope we can bring them some peace about it.
Well, the only way anybody's going to have peace about what's going on Earth or what will go on Earth is when they stop focusing their imagination on fear of the future. There is no other way to cease their troubles and tribulations than that. It just means that if people who are like little gods and goddesses clothed in rags of the illusion that they're a physical body, number one. So when they have fear of the future, it's mostly based on how old they are, when they're going to die, and what's going to happen when they die. Do they live? Is there life after death? And all these other things, which come about because people have been suppressed, had their higher faculties suppressed before they were compelled to incarnate on this planet. So they eventually end up in a society of people that reinforce their growing up looking at themselves in the mirror as a physical body. And then they're worried about this all the time, day and night. And that kind of grounds them to the earth and keeps them from functioning as the Atma, or what people on earth refer to as soul, which isn't a physical body at all. And it is the real person, or entity, or individual that runs a physical body. So I don't focus on giving people information. Anybody can give information. That's just data. Data you put in your head, but data you put in your head doesn't change you. Information won't change a person. It can lead to the exploration, even the courage to find ways, cross paths with beings that can assist someone to actually have experience. Without the experience, consciousness does not change because of data. I can tell you there's a secret space program and they're launching this or they're doing that. It doesn't change the person's consciousness on Earth one bit. Not at all. Because there's no way to prove it. It's classified. Anybody can say anything to sell books or whatever they're doing it for. Many people are sincere, some are not, in promoting hidden truth or UFOs or extraterrestrials or whatever it might be. I think most people start out sincere, but they get off the track after a while because money and success or fame and fortune takes them over sooner or later. And then they'll start competing with each other, which is not a good sign. It's not healthy because it really doesn't help other people recover what they once knew. Direct experience is, as far as I know anyway, it's the only way to recover hidden truth that's been suppressed in the past people no longer remember. The fact is, if someone comes to this planet, gets in a body, gets born as a baby, they have to develop a new brain, new nervous system, run a body till it gets bigger, and then more of who they are begins to land in that body. We call it being an adult. Human bodies don't grow to be an adult. The body grows to a point where the being that's running it can bring more of its own mature nature from other lives into that body without realizing it. and they become more adult-like, and the body can match that as far as it stops growing. And people don't realize this is what's really taking place. More of who they are as a being through eternity, through many lifetimes before this one on Earth, begins at least unconsciously manifest through that form, that physical form. So there's nothing in the brain growing up on a planet like Earth, because it's not offered as a teaching through any institution on this planet. Some very more private gurus may teach a few students more about what the work that I do, but it's really not openly taught even in those paths. In other words, for people to recover what they knew and who they are before they came to this Earth, they need to be able to get out of their body, which is a normal function they should be able to do. And on normal worlds, many that have human life that are spacefaring, they grow up on a planet with parental and government support to leave their bodies from birth.
Wow.
And then it's like you've got a mature being, and the parents who leave their bodies can talk with this being. They're running a little body. They never think they own the child. They don't suffer from the illusion that their child is theirs. It's just genetics of combination of male and female to make the body grow in a very slow way, like on Earth. And then it takes its natural course to grow to an adult status in 18 or 20 plus years, kind of thing. But the being, even a baby, any kind of a body at all, does not run itself from a brain. In other words, a baby's born, the brain has nothing in it. It's a new brain, and it has some automatic functions to where it can breathe and eat and poop and all that. But it has no capability to use a sophisticated mental or emotional process, because the brain and nervous system aren't developed to channel it from the being that's running that body.
Yeah, they have that real soft spot on their head too.
Right. Yeah, and babies leave their body all the time. They're not surrounded by people on this planet that in any way encourage them to be strong and understanding of what they're doing. In fact, everything on Earth, including their parents, who grew up in similar ways, put an energy field out towards newborn children that says, you are a body, you belong to me. And there's no such thing as dreams. You can't get out of your body. It's all, we're grounded to Earth. Now let's train this being to survive as a physical body. And that's what parents do. I mean, they're supposed to help the child grow up so that it doesn't burn itself in fire, doesn't run across the street in front of a bus, and it learns how to survive in a very coarse planet of people who are completely, almost entirely unconscious about who they are as beings. And so a child will grow up in this society going to school systems who are being run by adults who had similar upbringings. And so the reinforcement is in every way materialistic and nothing to do with encouraging or reinforcing a being to use their higher faculties, because societies on Earth don't know anything about higher faculties. They don't know about the Atma, what they really are, what it looks like, how it's constructed, what is it capable of doing.
Yeah, nobody ever talks about that. That's so true. I was just going to say that.
Well, how are you going to talk about it if you're not conscious of it?
That's true.
You're not.
Yeah,
people in power understand that it's good for them to stay in power by controlling masses of people, by knowing some things that they keep from people. Even knowing extraterrestrials exist is a form of lording over a certain power and system over the mass of people. If you know it and the people don't, then you have a certain awareness of what's beyond this planet, and it puts you in a position of control. It's like using nuclear weapons as a threat to keep people in line, even if they can't use them.
That's true.
It's the threat of them that manipulates the masses in every country, from every executive center in every country by mutual agreement, particularly after World War II. It was done to keep people rebuilding a damaged world and feeling safe to make babies, be baby boomers, and then that's been going on for 60, 65 years, plus. One of the things that people decided at that time was not to reveal to human beings officially on the planet that certain people in governments knew extraterrestrial exists and that we're coming here, both tyrant and non-tyrant. You can't get a people after a world war to rebuild and feel safe if your governments and militaries say, guess what? There are races out there so vastly superior in technology to us. We can't guarantee your safety raising those babies. And they're not going to get people to be consistent at their work or their jobs or building classified military industrial complex factories and building missiles and all that stuff. To do that, you have to have people feel like you're in a country or you're being protected from your government, your military. And they are to some degree, you know. But when it comes to the extraterrestrial issue, they're not. They're not far enough along technologically, even spiritually, to make that claim. And because of that, it really comes down, the hidden truth of it is that there are races out there, many of them human, in a huge organization of world systems that have to do with actually protecting the people of this planet from tyrants who would have raped it and killed most of the people here if they were allowed to do it. There are races out there that in the past were not respecters of human beings whatsoever. And something was done to them long ago that made them that perverted. If you go back far enough in galactic history and look at this situation, as I have done, it becomes clear that the races out among the stars had their own problems in maintaining a balanced system in the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy, to prevent war or end wars quickly if they started. And there was a great war 500,000 years ago, destroyed many worlds, and then it finally came to an end. The treaty was arranged, and that treaty has been policed ever since. So when you get a system on Earth, systems on Earth that is like communism versus democracy kind of thing, behind those systems are the influences of extraterrestrials, tyrant or benevolent. And it's really nothing more than a mirror of the influence of how things are off-world.
Well, how do the benevolent beings, how do they run their planet? I mean, I'm sure there's a number of different ways, but obviously whatever we're doing as humans here on Earth doesn't work or hasn't been working.
Barely. Kind of works, sort of, if you push it and compel it and coerce it and threaten it along, you know, then people get motivated out of fear. Any culture on any world system in the history of creation that was created, maintained, or motivated by fear ended up being destroyed.
Wow.
Because
that's not a good thing.
No, because it's negative, and ultimately it puts out a negative energy that goes out in the universe. And according to the law of physics, one of the primary laws, every action creates an equal but opposite reaction. This is immutable. That's the way it works. You put out this negative fear and imagination and control and domination. The people doing it are more afraid they're going to have their little lives and power taken by the masses. So they want to trap them first. They're more afraid in certain ways than the masses of people are. That's how tyrants operate. But when you put out that energy it takes suppressive negative energy to squash down the consciousness of people on any world. And the more you do it, the people doing it without realizing it are setting up their own fall in the future. Because they're putting out an energy that has to come back to them. It's called teaching. It's the way the universe teaches beings to behave better and to treat each other with respect. People don't do that on Earth for the most part. And there are races out among the stars that didn't respect other races, that were arrogant, or that acted like they were superior, or created situations dealing with humans to suppress them so they could act superior when they weren't. This goes off-world, and it's just data. It's information. The way I've always said this to people is truth is true for all beings, or it's not true at all. And I don't just mean people on Earth. That's way too limiting. Truth in a sense of what would wake up a being or soul to remember what it is and how it is indestructible, and that it's meant to run bodies and eventually become a co-creator with the source behind all life, to come up with new ways of doing things to make this whole nonsense out here work better. And each one of us that are people on Earth who think they're a body, and they think this is their one and only lifetime, and they go to some heaven, are being manipulated and controlled by tyrants, one way or another, because that kind of system of belief keeps them from actually doing anything about waking up themselves, or
Yes.
seeking out or finding people and things that can help them recover. Most of those beings are not on this earth. Look at the society, look at what's on news, look who's in politics, look at who runs corporations. They don't give any implication to the rest of us that they know anything relative to what's above your head, the Atma. So, and I don't have anger or hatred or anything like this for these people. They've been heavily manipulated just like the rest of the masses have been. If you're a tyrant race, you want to get control of an elite, snooty group. Smallest elite on a planet. Then get control of them, promise them anything, but manipulate them subconsciously. Then get them to control elected people and get the elected people to control the news networks and press so you can manipulate how they think growing up. You keep looking for truth on the press, the next CNN, if North Korea is bad or it's going to bomb us. Oh, no, now it's Iran. Oh, it's Iran gets unpopular, doesn't work, they go back to North Korea or back to Iran or Afghanistan or Russia or they'll just make up anything. There are real threats out there that military and policing does take care of to protect people from nut jobs, little cultures that are just nuts, have gone nuts from the pressure of having their true self suppressed so far down the scale of life. They've got nothing left but to try to have an effect, a negative effect, anything, even on anyone, like blowing themselves up in the middle of innocent children and men and women in some, like terrorist acts.
Yeah.
Those are done by people who have been so suppressed so far down the scale of life. They want to have an effect on anything because they feel like they're completely controlled and dominated by everything. In a lot of ways they are. So you can understand what causes a person to go postal, so to speak.
Yes.
And it really is the pressure. Some people just can't handle being here and having all their higher faculties taken from them, suppressed down to where they think they're a body. All they've got is drugs or growing up in peer groups and peer pressure and in a society that really does not do anything to stop that, or
That's
they would have
true.
long ago. It's kind of like keeping the status quo. So and the people that are policing all this and trying to correct it don't really understand how to do it, because if they did, they'd have done it. So they don't. But, that's why I always say that this planet and its people, and I mean this for the well-being of all people on Earth, I always come from this viewpoint and sharing with people. My work is about assisting people in all walks of life to recover who they are. Now that would be hidden government, what people call the Illuminati. I don't care what race they are from the stars, what dimension they're from, whether they're classified or not, whether they're generals or not, whether they're presidents or not, whether royal families and growing up in an illusion that they're superior because they're royalty over others, which was a manipulated situation that put them in power as royalty in history in the first place. They didn't, and the thing about it is royalty was not invented. The idea of royalty was not invented on this planet.
Did that come from a tyrant race?
Yeah, out among the stars, sure. The idea of money, printing money, and using it to condition people to its use was not invented on Earth either, not even in Rome or before Rome.
That had to have come from a tyrant race as well.
These were imported here. Usually they put an elite or support an elite royal line in power in order to get slaves to do the dirty work, mining minerals, space-based minerals from Earth, under treaty, in small pockets. No one race has ever been allowed to dominate this planet.
I'd say a large percentage of the crime that happens is related to money or the lack of it, and that's why it happens.
It's not really money or the lack of it. It's the pressure.
Well,
of
yeah, the
not
press,
being
yeah.
able to access your higher faculties, to remember, not being able to recall or remember anything. I mean, literally nothing. Ask most people on the street what they were when they were big before they had this body. They can't answer you. Ask them what they were before this life and where they lived and what they knew. They can't answer
Sad.
you. When they try to go to people that are trained in college and universities with PhDs, those people do not have any answers. They don't. They only have theory, backed by experimentation that seems to support a current theory. That current theory becomes antiquated and is replaced by another theory when they do some experimentation that proves that theory didn't quite encompass what they thought, and they go into something that allows for greater flexibility in understanding creation. Quantum physics is also theory. There's some elements of it that understand a greater understanding of the universe, and some that do not. When they find a little particle, or they find that there's energy existing behind the atomic structure of matter, even in the dark matter of space, then they begin to realize that that energy does not observe or obey or follow necessarily the laws of physics governing matter, molecules, and their movements in time and space. It doesn't work. And that's something that's waking up on planet Earth today. They're beginning to understand that there's an energy behind all energies that isn't what they thought it was. And it doesn't work according to the laws of physics. So they have to hustle and try to figure out some math and things to support a much deeper understanding of energy. Because there's the most energy that exists in creation isn't even nuclear in nature.
That's got to be really.
It isn't. A great mass of energy in the what you would call dark matter between planets and galaxies is not nuclear in nature as they understand it.
Wow.
And it does things that don't quite fit the laws of physics as it's understood on Earth. Not yet.
Is that what's causing all this new revelation about things? A lot of truth is coming forward about things that have been kept from people.
Well, part of that is actual disclosure. People are wanting to do disclosure, which was part of the original purpose of the National Security Act when things were classified regarding extraterrestrials, at great amounts of energy and expense over all these years to keep the lid on that one. If you're reverse engineering technology that has to do with anti-gravity, weapons beyond missiles and rockets and bombs, defensive if nothing else, or how to move through interdimensional doorways and portals that exist in great profuse abundance throughout the universe. Then it involves extraterrestrials that know how to use it, and we don't. You classify it. That was their thinking, because you're going to start working on technologies that you don't want any other power on Earth to beat you to it, whether it's China or Russia or anybody else. They're thinking the same way. So then you classify everything to do with anything to do with extraterrestrials, because all the technology we're enjoying today, after World War II, cell phones and microscopic level programming and etchings in silica-based wafers, computer chips, and in a more advanced crystalline structure for using them as computers, was all derived and awoken after World War II in people here through the extraterrestrial influence, one way or another.
Wow.
Because they've mastered this stuff long ago. So we would never be the first to come up with any of it.
That makes sense. You know what I read? It was kind of wild, actually. And that was that there was this group of people that were supposedly going to storm Area 51 because they wanted to see the terrestrials. They said, well, they can't shoot us all. I'm going, are you kidding me? You know, that's...
No one would ever get near that place.
Idiocy, but anyway.
No, and no one ever has. You're not going to get in that. You're not going to get in places like that with shotguns and bullet and rifles. It's just no. They would see people coming a long ways away.
Yeah.
That's old history. They don't want you knowing that you're not going to see it. unless the generals and people that are in the classified community decide they are done, tired of lying to everyone all the time, day and night, their own families they can't tell anything about. And that distorts the nervous system. It makes disease in those people. They get unhealthy. They get cancer. They die. They don't live forever in those classified arenas, hidden classified governments or any of it. Because what they're doing is, maybe justifiably was at the end of World War II, it's negative. It means their imagination, what they put out in thought and feeling, is measurable on an oscilloscope, goes out and affects the atmosphere, and these thoughts bounce off, just like radio waves, they bounce off the ionosphere and they go all over the planet. And anything negative about the future, suppressing people, is ultimately going to harm the people doing it. And there's no future in it. There's no future in it because ultimately it sets up repercussions in space-time that have to come back as a negative wave. Perfectly fair.
Wow.
So cultures and planets and governments don't last because, and if you look at our history on Earth, tyrant cultures don't last. Never did, never will.
And those are the only cultures that we're ever taught about, too. They make them
In
sound
school,
like they're good.
isn't that weird that for some reason, because the good cultures that have been on this planet involve extraterrestrials, so the governments have all classified that all away.
Oh, that's what
They
it
don't
is.
want that being taught in schools to children. The truth, the real history, because that has to do with the fact that human beings never originated on this planet. And their whole system of lying and deceit breaks down. It doesn't have to be a change in the way this planet's run that's destructive. That's wrong thinking. That isn't how extraterrestrials and beings and their master teachers will help this place change. Not through destruction. That's a completely anal kind of way of looking at things. Rear end kind of thing. I hate to be crude, but it's really very, very backward. Mm-hmm. It's like looking at things from a lower consciousness of energy as a physical body. It just means that when people relate to what they decide to do about a culture and their people, from thinking they're physical bodies, they're basically making decisions based on protecting their own turf as a physical body, not as a being. Which means they're working from their lower chakras or energy centers in creating decisions for the entire world. And when a whole culture begins to defend itself and make decisions about the directions it's heading, based upon protecting physical bodies and not understanding what they are, they're going to make incorrect decisions every time. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's just I'm trying to formulate these words correctly. It's never my intention to be crude or say words that are crude, but sometimes I'm trying to get this across so that people understand as a collective people, when people make decisions about the future of their planet, based on fear of the future, fear of their physical bodies living or dying, fear of anything in any way, shape, or form, fear at all, it's going to be an incorrect choice. And it'll create repercussions in space-time that they'll continually have to spend money on and secrecy to try to fix it. And it, again and again and again and again. And it'll never stop. That kind of thinking, based on subconsciously driven fear, is only destructive. If you look at the cultures of the history that is taught people on this planet, then you realize that they all came to a violent end, one way or another. Nobody knows what happens to the Mayans really, except the conquistadors or the Aztec, and But these were colonies that were established in those primitive parts of the world, so to speak, and they brought their little slaves with them to do the dirty work, the mining. They'd set up a royalty to rule over the people, and some of the royalty would be in the know that the gods that they were forced to worship were not from Earth, and they weren't gods, they were extraterrestrials, tyrants. And Sumeria is a good example of that as well. It's the way the history is that people are taught here. And again, all this stuff we're talking about is just data or information to people listening to this show. But when we go in a little journey, by deliberately putting the body in the trance state we call sleep, that everyone on Earth, no matter how nuts they are, as long as they can go to sleep at night, they know how to put the body in the trance state called sleep. And everybody does it like experts, without realizing that they, the being, the Atma, the true them, like that what looks like above your head, it's spherical. It's not a flat circle like you've got depicted there. It's multidimensional, has a number of levels to it, has a white core, it's made of energy, it's an individual being. That individual being knows how to run the chakras and the spine and the nervous system and the brain and the body, a body that's been developed genetically through an ancient history people don't remember, and not on this world, to a point where that higher being can run higher awareness and faculties through that nervous system and that brain. Now you can imagine if you grew up on another planet as a human being, and your culture and your parents and your government were benevolent. They never lied to the people. They never did anything as leaders of their world to mislead or misdirect for their own selfish interests. If you grew up on a planet like that, and you had recorded in this brain that was growing up as a new body, that extraterrestrials exist, there's anti-gravity, there's different dimensions, here's how you get out of your body, your parents do it with you, and you grew up, you'd be motivated. Not only would you have a photographic memory and use 100% of that brain instead of 55 to 10% they tell people on Earth that's all they use. Silly. 100% brain, 100% developed, and people can only use 5 to 10% of it? Why is that? What's wrong with that information they're putting out? It's not correct. It means that certain genomes on the DNA on these bodies were manipulated by extraterrestrials and not good guys long ago, usually when they brought them here as slaves first, with certain genomes turned off. So the being that's running that body becomes, in a sense, trapped, and they can use that energy and use those bodies as slaves. It's very simple. You shut down the ability to live for 1,000 years and make you live for 80 when the tyrants who did this to you live 800, so they don't even live as long as human beings on other worlds. You shut down their photographic capability and give them what's called intuition. And how reliable is that? And then you shut off their ability to hear and talk with other beings telepathically from Atma to Atma, not the brain. The being running the body to another being running another body somewhere. And you make it, you do give them speech. And, you know, it's kind of like they're telepathic still, but it's suppressed. It's like some young guy looks at a beautiful woman, right, in a bikini walking across the street. And he just thinks, boy, that's a really pretty thing. Yeah. And she turns around and smiles at him. How did she pick up on the fact that he was looking at her? Women and men do this all the time on Earth. Because they're telepathic, but they don't think of it that way. They're unconscious about it.
Or you think of somebody and all of a sudden they call. That's another.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, and you just call it intuition, or might be, what would they call it? Psychic, maybe?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And that's not reliable at all. Because the psychic energies work with the dual current in the lower dimensions. And they're normally supposed to be wrapped around each other in harmony, like the teardrops in the yin and yang symbol.
Uh-huh.
And with another energy running, keeping them in balance and together to manifest things. But people have got that all broken down, and they're running two things at once, positive and negative. Fear of the future, want the good things for the future, want good things for my family, but there's going to be an Armageddon any day now. Ooh, reptilians are going to come down, bomb the world, and kill everybody. And they think like this. Oh, there's going to be a nuclear war any day. Let's grow up and pay taxes, but always have that edge on our growing up. It's focused into a materialistic concern on a purely physical level, which has nothing to do with the awareness of the Atma, the real being running those bodies. Keeps them outward focused in negative ways. So the imagination that they're putting out, because they've grown up in a culture that compels this, and they came to this world manipulated to think this way too, then they're going to be thinking as they grow up, I want this wonderful, successful life for me and my family, but my God, we could be blown up in nuclear holocaust at any second. And their kids grow up with that too. So they're putting out an equal amount of fear and negativity and constructive, positive imagination. And those become opposed to each other. It's like grounding the terminals of a battery and short-circuiting all the current into the earth. Those two currents opposed ground energy, so people stay grounded. They can't use their higher faculties normally.
So would that be kind of like you have, say, black and white here, and you come together, and it's more gray, like?
No, it's not black and white and gray. You're thinking in terms of dark and light, good and bad. Okay. They're just two types. They're opposite poles. There are two kinds of energies.
It's trying to get to neutral.
It's only an illusion because it comes from one energy above the void in the higher worlds. Once it crosses that void into the etheric, mental, causal, astral, physical dimensions of time-space, then it splits into a dual current, and the two work together to create form in the lower dimensions. They're supposed to be working in harmony, corralled, contained by a third energy. When a positive and negative stream comes through the center of a being, through the white core of the being, and then into the brain of a body, and it's split into two opposing forces, imagine good and imagine bad at the same time. That's where the problem is in people on Earth. And not just on Earth, but other worlds too.
How do you harmonize that?
Well, obviously, the only way I know of to do that is to imagine in only one way. There's only one correct way to use the imagination. And you can't correct that if you believe wrongly that the imagination is made up in your brain. Really? You think that what you grew up with in one lifetime on this earth as a child, growing up to kindergarten and first grade and college, coming out in the world and having babies and being parents and all of that, has much to do with what's in that brain that's in your experience on one lifetime on earth, has enough information to actually imagine getting out of your body, being on another planet, going on spaceships, going to higher realities? None of that was ever it was never programmed into people growing up on Earth. They have nothing in their brain dealing with any of it, which means there's nothing there for them to draw on from the brain. And here's the kicker. A person sitting in idle daydreaming in a classroom, they're bored with what's being done, and they're looking out the window, and their eyes see the trees and the parking lot, right? And they're imagining being on that surfboard or being in the mountains or whatever. The physical eyes are only seeing what's out that window, but something else is imagining seeing what that surfboard is, or that snow trip, or that being on the beach, or being on another planet, or what's it like. That is the being, like that symbol above your head. That's what's really seeing that, not the brain.
Yeah, that was a profound thing when I first heard that from you, because I never ever heard that ever before, you know, and so it's really awesome to be aware of that. Because
once you are, you can't go back. You're going to find, like anybody else, when you begin to recover real hidden truth about what you are as a being, not a body, and what it's capable of, what it once knew in the multidimensional creation before it found itself on this earth with little or no memory intact. And I think that's normal. It isn't. It's not normal at all. But people believe that because they have nothing else until it crosses their path to draw from. They can't draw from their own brain growing up any of this because there's none of that programmed into it. None. Yep. If I asked you what you were in another life in ancient Lemuria, how are you going to get that from the brain that grew up in this lifetime and that's all it knows? Well, you're not. So something else other than the brain and your body is what remembers that past life.
See, people know that something's missing. That's why they go through those past life regression and stuff like that. Because they go,
But here, when they go through a past life regression, even the people doing it are often not aware enough to understand that the person recovering it is not recovering it in their brain at all. You put somebody in the trance state, if you put them into a hypnotic trance, it's really putting the body in the trance state called sleep. Same way you do when you put it to sleep at night, except the being and the person talking keeps the person conscious, separate from the body going to sleep. That's all it is, hypnosis. And then the being, the body's at rest, can go and look at things if it has someone to feel safe with, even terrorizing things. And it can go and review things that have been purposefully suppressed, being picked up by a little gray and given one of these, and maybe some blood samples taken and abused they used to do decades ago that they don't do anymore. They don't. It was done to people here for a time. Now it's not being done. And people that have had that done and had their memory wiped or suppressed get psychologically deranged from it. They really can't live a normal life until they go through a reverse hypnosis regression therapy of some kind, if they're lucky to find someone who's had some experience with abduction themselves who can handle it. Because most reverse hypnosis regression therapists can't handle it. Going into the real truth of what happened to people before they were made to incarnate on this planet.
Because they don't even know either, right?
They don't know. They're not trained in medical school or psychiatry and psychology and any of this. Why would they be? So, for a person to recover what they knew before they had this brain and this body of this life, and bring that higher and greater, more expansive awareness into this life to enlighten it, means that the Atma itself running this body has to recovery. It has to recover who it is, what it knows. That isn't a physical body and never was. There is no other way. There isn't. A person has to remember who they are. There's nothing in the brain of a human body that can visualize another planet. There's just brain cells with the neurons running around. There's nothing, there's no camera in there. There's no motion picture projector you can view. I'm looking at a planet called Lemriel. I'm looking at Lemriel in the past time tracker. I'm looking at another dimension. Or I'm actually there while my body's in the trance state, going through this experience and bringing this awareness back to this brain that does not have that experience in it. Duh. It doesn't. People have it all mixed up because they keep trying to make it to be the brain that's doing all this. The brain is not designed to imagine anything.
Yeah, that was a new revelation for me too.
That's really not its function,
Mm-hmm.
It's just a vehicle through which the Atma runs, and it's supposed to be a vehicle that the Atma runs, knowing it's not the body. How many people on earth know that today? So what happened to people on this planet? You've got people from all different races, so-called, on Earth, represented on one sphere. African American, Caucasian, I keep bringing this up. And I do repeat a lot of this in these different shows because it bears repeating until people start to get the difference, till they start to remember that the races that exist on this planet did not originate here. No human being evolved out of the primordial swamps of this world, ever. They didn't come from Cro-Magnon man or Neanderthal. That's pure theory with no justifiable, verifiable proof that links our current human form to them whatsoever. They're extinct humanoid species. And they didn't originate here either.
Yeah, and then they try to say we came from monkeys.
No. It's just, there's no verifiable proof to any of it. It's just theory. It always has been, and it always will be, because the missing link does not exist on this planet. So they can't find it here, because it isn't here. That's hidden truth. I mean, it isn't, it never will be found here. They found skeletons 18, 25 feet tall, human, highly developed. As soon as archaeologists find it's classified, taken away, because it's extraterrestrial related. And that's the highest level of classification on this planet. So naturally, they're going to take it away. have a little talk to those archaeologists in no uncertain terms. It's classified, don't talk about it, or we're going to put you in jail. That's it. It's the end of it. That particularly got reinforced and enforced after World War II in this way. The original bylaws were disclosed fully to the people in the United States and in the world when they felt people would not panic in the streets if they knew extraterrestrials, good and bad, were involved in this planet. It's simple. Disclosure in this manner is beginning to take place. I got a TV series called Project Blue Book, which is about Jay Hynek's life, scientist hired by the U.S. Air Force in a new classified system under Truman to put the lid on the extraterrestrial issue and to give plausible deniability to any real UFO or extraterrestrial contact experience, make it to the public, to the press, to the media, which was completely controlled after World War II, to put out that most of that stuff is just phenomena, swamp gas, and some other nonsense.
Yeah.
And none of that really worked for a lot of people. It never has. But even the person that was hired, Jay Hynek, went through so many experiences dealing with extraterrestrials. He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't keep lying to people, making up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that TV series is out. Been 1 year of it, be more. It's really based on his actual life's experiences. As when he was part of Project Blue Book. I mean, you got this Jay Hynek with his little goatee and his pipe sitting on the end of the tarmac in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, by Wyoming, by that Devil Tower, sitting there. He's actually one of the characters in that scene when that big ship lands. The little gray guys get out and they're all angelic-like. Yeah, nice, but no.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, there's so much going on that.
I think people's curiosity is really getting stimulated about extraterrestrials, so they really want to know. But unfortunately, it seems like they're trying to create a state of fear about them rather than...
Well, that's Hollywood for you. Giant cockroach people in massive ships coming on, blowing up all the cities. No, because the actual more advanced tyrant extraterrestrials, royal family extraterrestrials, non-human, don't blow up worlds. They sneak in from behind and get control subconsciously over the leaders so they can keep everything in place and keep the human populace or other populace enslaved, creating, doing jobs, going to factories and making things for the extraterrestrials that are shipped off planet in a secret classified space program. And that's what happened here. It's pure and simple. The influences of things that made things become deceptive and dishonest here were influenced by negative entities from other worlds, promising generals and other things all kinds of antiquated extraterrestrial technology in exchange for doing some DNA experiments on our populace, completely against the normal moral understanding of any leader on this planet. Even Eisenhower, but these guys were influenced in a way they could not have seen coming, through a technology they couldn't understand. The CIA, when it was had no understanding of advanced misuse of extraterrestrial technology on the subconscious minds of people to create one when there wasn't one, or to reinforce one that's there to do their bidding. They couldn't have seen it coming.
That was something that I think is important to reemphasize too, the fact that why do we have a subconscious mind?
Not supposed to.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I mean, let's face it, if it's subconscious, you don't know what's there. You're not conscious, it's subconscious. Well, that means somebody that knows how to play with it can put anything they want in there.
That's
and
horrible.
And then if you create an artificial subconscious energy field around the being, not the body, the being, because the being itself cannot be harmed by anything physical. Doesn't matter what it is. Black hole, hydrogen bomb, none of it can harm that. It's not made of matter. But you can put an energy field around it through which it looks at the universe and gets distorted images of almost everything.
Wow.
And usually done when someone's body is tortured to death or killed, and the Atma itself is suspended in a heavy gravitational field, and then an energy is created around it. And it can be taken to Earth and stuffed in a body and made to forget. So just keep reincarnating with no memory. You don't even need guard towers then.
Wow.
People that had this done to them on Earth knew something was wrong. They signed treaties with the wrong people initially. And it's taken decades for the good guys to make inroads into the leaders on this planet, hidden and otherwise, to get them safely out of a bind they got themselves in with the wrong crowd. And they didn't know how to get out of it. So that means that beings from other worlds in great numbers ultimately have to be of assistance to the people on this world in order for it to go through this transformation into people not having a subconscious mind and into a spacefaring race and into an enlightened world without annihilation and destruction.
And so much of that is being put out now, the Armageddon theme, and
Has been for decades. Next December 21st at 10 o'clock, there's going to be the end of the world with a big meteor. And then it comes December 31st at night. Oops, didn't happen.
Or Y2K, that was another one.
Or Y2 worry.
Yeah.
No, or you know, there's going to be an Armageddon at a certain date, or
and I'm a gun out of here.
that's what I would say. Regarding Armageddon out of here. Yeah. I take the time to say all this stuff because this is not why I do this. This is you and I chit-chatting on a little radio show to have some, I wouldn't call it debate, but conversation about enlightening points of view or enlightening understandings about things that people have never heard put this way.
Yeah.
And I know they've never heard it this way on this earth.
I know I never have.
Because I came to this world to do exactly this in a unique way. I did. I'm not joking.
Well, that's what's happening, and that's why there are people that are picking up on it.
Because the premise of my work is that they once knew, and they've been made to forget, and not in very nice ways, before they're ever born on this planet. I've made a statement that the religions that are represented on this planet have their good points and all of that, but there's not one of them that's represented on this planet that exists anywhere else in the universe off this planet.
Anywhere.
And that's infinitely bigger than anything on this earth. And I do mean infinitely, on multidimensional levels. How can a human brain growing up in one lifetime on Earth ever comprehend billions of worlds, hundreds of millions of spacefaring races working in harmony together on multidimensional levels? How could they ever comprehend where they came from the source that exists far above the void known to most Buddhist monks in the upper regions, where there is no negative and positive energy at all, which is where we come from, the being, the Atma, the soul. And that our original purpose was to go into these lower worlds of creation, which were an experiment, and to help develop them to be mirrors of the upper worlds. That's a failed experiment. That never happened.
It didn't work.
Flat out didn't work. So something else had to come into creation, and it did recently in recent years in the upper worlds to give a command or a direction to the lower worlds to change, this time without destroying them. Because the lower systems of planets and worlds were completely annihilated in the past. Beings drawn up to the upper worlds across the void, the whole thing rebuilt, and then everybody sent back down into it with the experiment of evil still running, good and bad, positive and negative, all that split current running through the consciousness of a being, when it was really meant to be whole and contained objectively outside of the being. That's not matter. If you run positive and negative streams of material or molecular time rate energy through the core of a being, through perverting it, or through the consciousness it grows up with, so that it imagines separating the two and imagining both opposed to each other. If you do that, then you can trap the Atma. And there are beings who run the lower dimensions who got off on ego trips and played God and made people worship them, or you get a lightning bolt up your butt and Satan will deal with you in hell. Those things were concocted by tyrant beings, not even of earth. And people were made to worship in fear the source of all life that never required it in the first place.
That's
What
sad.
did it say? Yeah, the real source behind all life had nothing to do with compelling people to worship it or else. All that it ever required of any of us is that we respect it and each other. That's it. If you do that, you have freedom to play in the multiverse with all the other vastly more advanced beings that are out there. Because in the end, no matter how far they're evolved, technically, they're just an Atma, like you and I.
I noticed you said it too, because people frequently refer to it as a him
Or her, even some too, is a her.
Not very many. Mostly it's him, father. Not very rare do you hear it being.
Well, now the Atma, which is spherical, is not a human body, male or female.
Yay, that's what I was getting at.
But it chooses of its own free will in eternity to have a feminine characteristic or masculine. That has nothing to do with bodies.
Or one being superior to the other.
Bodies, as far as being separated in feminine and masculine genetics and genitals and all that, those are just forms that express the choice of the Atma that runs it. That's all. Atmas, as in their normal state, in their normal way of being, do not consider them superior, like men over women or women over men. They don't think that way. In fact, they don't even use the mind at all, which is stuck on the mental plane. The mind that people talk about is a body or a life a person's running 4 dimensions up from here. And it's made of mental, molecular, time, rate, matter. The mind, the computer that we use to think with and reason, isn't even in the brain. It's 4 planes up in a body you're running you don't remember you even have. And it unconsciously often will channel this mental capability through the brain once it's developed to be a mature adult. And you'll start bringing in all these talents and other things and inventing things and physics, stuff like that, much of which is coming from either other lives or from other realities where you're living a lifetime. The Atma Spherical runs a number of forms in each of the 4 lower dimensions, like 1 in the physical, astral, causal, mental, and etheric. And these are bodies made of matter of those planes, much higher, slower. And that life in that body runs a certain course in time, space. It could live for 1 million years in the etheric plane. It's almost transparent. Very little negativity mixed with matter there. But there's still some. It's still part of the lower dimensions. The Atma itself, you and I, did not originate in any of those dimensions. We didn't originate in positive and negative, good and bad, time and space. We originated the source itself, many dimensions above the void. And that energy in that plane, we are comprised collectively, what people call the Supreme Being. All Atmas in all of creation collectively comprise or collectively make up the Supreme Being. And it isn't a one single being sitting there lording everything over everyone else. You could actually go and talk with the source, but it'd be a voice and a way of communicating to you from the collective of all that is in individual Atmas, because all individual Atmas are telepathically linked from white core to white core. And yet the individual, you, remains in eternity. The sum of its parts, meaning all beings that make up this supreme source, is much bigger and grander than the sum of its parts. Because collectively together, it operates as something that is not an individual, like an Atma, like a soul. And it's not a tyrant. Beings that make it up on different levels can be tyrants, but it of itself is not.
Wow.
One of the problems in the lower worlds is to correct this whole tyrant thing. Tyrants are driven by subconscious terror. To dominate all life, least it be done to them first. That's the misdirected thinking, the program. And it was done to them long ago, or they wouldn't be like that. Once you begin to understand this history of the multidimensional creation, a certain amount of freedom starts to surface in the individual, because they begin to realize they drop anger and hatred and fear and revenge and doubt and speculation and theory. They don't need to work with it anymore. It's all negative. It's all negative, emotionally charged. The more advanced beings do not grow up on planets, nor do they utilize negative emotions of any kind. What would that be like, do you suppose, Gail?
Wonderful. I still catch myself sometimes with something negative, but I catch it much quicker than I ever did before.
That's because you now know, and you have the choice to do that. Doesn't matter what implants were put in you by reptilians or whenever they did what to whoever, because they don't do that. That's been stopped off this planet. There's no more gray abductions. That ended decades ago. And people still talk about it all the time as if it's still going on. It isn't.
Yeah, it's like I say to myself, hey, where did that come from? Stop it.
So, you know, and I will say this to people, or say it on your little radio show, that's not going on anymore. If they really do the work and investigate, they'll find out it isn't. They're talking about old things that happened decades ago. Mm-hmm. Things that happened in the classified space program happened decades ago, not current. People on Earth are still subconsciously have been messed with. And so they're running negative fear-based programs that have nothing to do with when they were done to them, because that's been stopped. Now, the real problem is how to unravel those subconscious tight knots in the people that live on Earth today in a balanced way that doesn't involve destruction. What a novel idea. That is going to take a lot more than me. That's going to take vast numbers of beings from other worlds that grew up without subconscious minds, including many human, working together to help sort out the very misdirected, subconsciously manipulated people that live on Earth today. Everyone on this planet knows something's not right. They know they don't remember. They should know a lot more than they know. It's like they've had something taken from them. They can't put a finger on it, right?
Yes.
Just can't put a finger on it because it's subconscious.
Well, and just the knowledge of the fact that doesn't exist outside of this planet.
Doesn't mean there aren't tyrant races still out there running world systems, but they are very carefully policed. Mm-hmm. And they're undergoing a process to untyrant them as we speak. So this eventually has to catch up to this planet too, and its people. I suppose when, say, a Japanese person or an African American or Caucasian person find out what their lineage is on worlds where that type of human being evolved, nowhere near Earth, things would change dramatically on this planet overnight. You throw all those cultures together with no memory, subconsciously terrorize them, and bring some type of religious, respectful religious stuff that exists in other worlds where people actually know what the source is and they get in and out of bodies, and it could be Buddhist-like, but not called Buddhism, or Muslim-like, but not called Muslim, or Christian-like, but not called Christianity. And you bring that to Earth and you throw them all together with no memory. And they're going to be in competition. And they're easy to control then, because they will not work together. Divided and conquered.
They're great at that.
Yeah. And that whole technique did not get developed on this world originally either. Human beings are billions of years old. Not millions. In this form. Only this form has certain genomes shut off, like switches. Like, for instance, you want to run your photographic memory, use 100% of your brain. Oops, the being pushes buttons and they don't work. And that's passed on genetically. So that has to be fixed too. The Atma, the real being, needs to remember what it is running this body, and the body's genes have to be fixed as well. And there are people out there that go, this is old stuff to them. They're experts. They're top-notch at it. They know what they're doing. People on Earth don't even have the technology to approach it. So if we don't request their help to come here and straighten this place out, it ain't going to get straightened out by us on Earth. Because people on Earth don't have free will. Oh, what did he say? Oh, yes, I do. No, you don't. You remember what you are, that's the Atma, the soul, and what it's structured like, and all of its faculties to comprehend the multidimensional universe and the source of all life? Do you remember that? Do you remember what you were in all your other lives? Do you remember anything about what you used to know before you were born here? And they go, no. Well, then you don't have free will.
That's big.
How could you? How can you make free will choices when you have the memory of one life growing up with a brain and a body on one little planet? What?
And cut off in 80 years, approximately.
How are you supposed to become enlightened? It's not the brain that becomes enlightened. It's the being running the brain. And it's the being that sees with the creative imagination is actually the use of a faculty, a highest faculty, to be able to go through the white core of its being, connect through the omnipresent living energy source that supports the entire thing. It's a co-creator with us. And you communicate into it. And the way it does what it does for you or with you is when you imagine where you want to go and what you want to do. And then it will create the circumstance, take you there instantly. Or bring the beings from other worlds to help you get that done. As long as your imagination is deliberately done for the good of all life, it will co-create with us. Which means the human being's destiny, real purpose, is to co-create wonderful new ways of doing things for the benefit of all life on every world, in every dimension of the grand multidimensional creation. That's our purpose. Our real purpose is that.
That's what people always wonder what their purpose is.
You know, that's it. We're not meant to be co-slave worshipers of the supreme mighty whatever it is that will strike thee with a bolt of lightning if you don't worship it perfectly, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. No.
Or go to hell.
Or, yeah, if you don't do my bidding, which is tyrant kings, dictators running priestcraft who didn't do their bidding, that was, you know, they were killed. And that's what you do to people to control them. Keep them from knowing what they are that's eternal while they're alive. Tell them they'll find it out when they die. There's no guarantee they're ever going to find that out when they leave this body. Go to what, the astral plane, which is run by emotion. And there's terror and fear there too, the next heaven up from here. What's the guarantee that they're going to be free from not being compulsively compelled to reincarnate in another body on Earth with no memory again?
Wow. That's why I found out about this, because I don't want to come back.
Well, you don't want to come back unconscious.
No.
I don't mind being on Earth, running a body on Earth or any planet, as long as I'm free to contribute new ways of doing things for the benefit of all life. My purpose.
Yeah, if
I
things
don't care if I have a body here or anywhere, because I'm not trapped in it. You know, I'm not, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter then.
I know what you mean.
If you're stuck in a body and can't get out of it, don't remember, you're afraid to get out of it because you think the devil will get you. There's a good one. Can't get out of the body, the devil will get you. Wait till you get taken somewhere by whoever it is you worship when you die to be safe. This is a crock of nonsense. Because the Atma cannot be hurt by any physical matter, technology, or weapon. And it can get out of the body that people in those lower consciousnesses can't even see it, much less do anything to it. And then can go on journeys and experience the multidimensional universe and wake this little brain up to be able to receive much higher capability and understanding. If you used 100% of the 100% of the brain you already have developed, what would your capabilities be right now?
It'd be telepathic,
photographic
memory, teleportation, telekinesis.
You'd be able to get in and out of the body easily because it's the being that runs those faculties, not the brain.
Change the molecular time rate of the body.
All that's possible. And it's old science to beings I know out there. Ancient stuff. Mastery of the genomes on the DNA They're all switches. They have individual frequencies. That's all there is to it. But you have to know what the frequencies are. And if you're good people, you're going to fix the stuff that says thou shalt get cancer at this point in your life. You just turn it off. Or you turn on other things that strengthen the immune system. You turn off this thou shalt die at 80 to 100 years. Turn it on back to thou shalt live 1,200 to 10,000 years. It's genomes. It's the control of the molecular makeup of the DNA in all the cells. And that's just on a physical body level. Nothing to do with the Atma itself. It's a genetic experience by higher scientists. Call them spiritual.
So does the Atma need the body to be in good shape or in good condition?
No,
or
it doesn't need a body at all.
Well, that's not what I mean. In order to bring those higher faculties down in.
Well, it helps if you're physically fit, but the Atma still operates separately from the body. The Atma, if you're blind, even deaf, you have different disabilities. If you can wake up what the Atma is that's running that body, you can have the freedom and work with beings who can help fix that body.
That's what I.
Or you can just leave it behind, turn it into a pile of dust and move on without this terrible attachment that you're a body and you can't lose it or you'll die nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that on other worlds they don't tolerate defects in genetics because they're just the vehicle through Atma's expected to run. They're not going to let anything screwy go on with it. That's normal. I'm telling you, that's normal on other worlds. Many. It's not like that on Earth because Earth people don't yet have the freedom of their higher faculties awoken to where they can rightly use such technology because it requires a telepathic being working with other realities in order to work that technology properly in the physical universe.
So it has less to do with the genomes on the physical
body than it does with but the Atma can learn. The Atma can run things around the blocks in the body.
That's what I was getting at. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what you're doing right now. You had a secondary implant removal session. That gets the big buggers out of the way that keeps you from seeing and understanding what's in the primary. That's terrorizing. It keeps you afraid of leaving your body, fear of death, fear of the future, fear of this, fear of that, fear of everything. You want good things for yourself and your family and all, but you're terrified of everything else. And that means when you're working with the lower two energies in the lower planes as legitimate energies that should not be used individually to create anything. When you do that, you're not functioning using the higher faculties because the higher faculties of the Atma, the spherical being, cannot be worked with lower plane energies. You can't throw negativity into the Atma or the higher worlds because it will not go beyond the void. It's a barrier. Nothing of a negative nature can go into the higher worlds from whence you came. That means you leave behind the illusion of being a physical body, an astral, causal, mental, or etheric body. You set it on a hanger. These are forms that run different capabilities for different planes of existence. And they're left behind, including the mind, on the mental plane. It's not killed or destroyed. It's just left with that body form. And as the Atma, you can go off into above the void and into the upper worlds where we create new ways of doing things to actually change this planet for the first time.
You know, it's kind of funny. I remember we talked about it one time, is that I was, on a journey and I was coming back and I actually was imagining going through the lower dimensions, saying to the body there, would you please get with it and start helping me?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you have to do. But people assume growing up, because they don't know any better, they're not given, the real issue is classified. Everything to do with enlightenment in the physical universe has to do with extraterrestrials. Everything. It could not be otherwise because human beings did not originate on this planet. So, it's out there, but it's also higher in vibration and higher realities. It's a multi-dimensional creation. It isn't just physical billions of galaxies out in space from a big bang floating around everywhere. No, there's a number of levels of that, even in the physical universe, layers. And then there's a number of layers in the emotional realm, where all emotion comes from, a higher heaven, if you will. And it has police, and it has bombs and wars and money, and it's negative too. And in fact, all the higher heavens from Earth, causal and mental and etheric, become increasingly finer in vibration. And they might be heaven to some people, but they aren't the end, and they aren't permanent. And you can't stay there forever. They're not meant to be permanent. You have to actually go beyond. I use this not as an insult to Buddhist monks. I hope that they understand that. And if they don't, that's too bad. It's not meant in any negative way. Because a lot of Buddhist monks have a lot of discipline. They chant, and they eat better, different, and they really have a lot of spiritual discipline. But if they're taught there's nothing beyond the void, they're missing out on the whole journey, because there is. And if you're not taught that, even by your super monk, then they're not really going to the source from whence they came in order to really become enlightened and free of karma and maya and illusion. You got to know about the worlds that exist above the void that have no negativity in them. So I bring it up for their benefit, out of respect. I utilize the void because they know there's these lower planes, and there's this barrier. They think that's it. There's nothing, and they describe it as a vacuum with nothing in it. Well, there is stuff in it, just not things. And then there's all kinds of other things above that have form and structure and beings. They even look physical. They're not. They manifest a physical form in order to have some way of relating to each other. Otherwise, it's just sphere to sphere forever. That's it. So they have a representative physical form there, mocked up, that they can relate with and have experience with. But it's made of energy from the higher worlds. It's not lower plane energy. You can't bring a physical body, a mind or an emotional body or a causal body or an etheric body to the upper worlds. Those are devices built out of the matter of those planes, through which the Atma, the real being, is meant to run, not suffering from the illusion that it is any of those bodies. That is the way it's supposed to work. So I put that out there because it's a lot of information people will have never heard on this planet, succinctly put in order in this way. And
I never heard it before.
If it's true for all, if it's true for all, or it's not true at all. I like say that, and I know it's true because I directly have the experience of which I speak, or I don't speak it.
I like that statement. I
don't work with theory at all. I don't work with speculation. I don't work with doubt. I don't work with debate. I don't work with theory. I already said that. So I don't work with things that are beliefs. I don't believe there's a source behind all life.
You know
I don't believe there's other dimensions. I don't believe you can get out of your body.
You know it.
I do it, and I know it. There's a difference. Faith, if it's any good at all, or if it's got a life force running through it that's alive, should lead to direct experience of what the faith talks about. If it doesn't do that, then the leaders of that faith are themselves deluded, because they don't know how to get that across to any of their followers. And usually it's just for power and money.
Yeah.
Or for the hidden agenda of a classified worldwide government to keep people ignorant, which was the agenda for decades. And before that was formed after World War II, tyrant leaders ran religious leaders in order to do the same effect on this planet. The real history of Earth is not known to people and taught to people on Earth today, because then they would know other great, wonderful cultures that have also been allowed to be on this planet under treaty for the last 500,000 years. Where's that history? I taught it in schools here. Oh, you're taught, look at the wonders of Egypt and the wonders of Rome. They were all tyrant thugs that would murder you and let lions eat you alive. And yay, isn't that neat? That's what they teach people is wonderful. Pyramids. Ooh, Pharaoh. If you don't do the Pharaoh's bidding, he's going to feed you to the snakes. How about Mayan? Oh, let's cut some hearts out and sacrifice some virgins. Ooh, to our reptilian overlords. So reptilian mining colonies. And the people brought here were slaves. They weren't from Earth. And those cultures vanished because that treaty was policed. And, benevolent beings don't come to worlds and try to run them for you. In the past, they didn't have the tools they have now to wake up a completely perverted, subconsciously deranged, manipulated, fear-ridden, driven people like the ones we have on Earth today in governments, classified arenas, private space programs, and all that stuff. They're running on fear. You cannot expect beings who don't run on fear to allow beings that do to come there in their spaceships and with their lay guns and their atomic nuclear weapons, come out there and shoot at the first thing that they don't understand. Because that's what they would do from Earth. Military thinking. And military is usually there to protect an elite and not the populace. And they're not going to tolerate that kind of thing. As it's childish, it's insane, it's neurotic, it's nonsense. It's driven by subconscious fear that the people doing it don't even know they have. So kind beings will very patiently try to get the people who are misdirected and were manipulated by tyrants illegally back into their right mode of being so they can make good decisions for their people and come and play among the stars and be given the technology to do so at no cost. That's what's waiting for the people of Earth right now. Disclosure isn't something that could happen, maybe will happen. It is underway and it cannot be prevented because it's being orchestrated from off-world, off this planet. The people here who are misdirecting everything now are beginning to realize there is no future in it for them. They begin to wake up, they realize negative deceit and dishonesty is going to create repercussions in space-time that will come and knock them down. Unexpectedly, out of nowhere. It's history. Nobody wants that. I don't want that. The beings I work with don't want that outcome. They want everyone on this planet to begin to uncover and recover who they are. None excluded.
I want that too.
Otherwise, you're just another tyrant, lording your sense of superiority over some other group. No, it can't work like that. It's not going to work like that. We are destined, this people on Earth, to play among the stars. Cannot and will never be allowed to do it the way we are now. Solar system that Earth is in is quarantined. Not figuratively, literally quarantined. Because just to have reverse engineered anti-gravity technology or trans-warp drive, whatever you want to call it, to go between the stars, it's an understanding of how higher energy affects the physical universe in order to make that work. And higher faculties in beings, not the bodies, have to be working on all thrusters in order for that to work. There isn't any way negative beings can ever run that very high in creation at all. You can have negative extraterrestrials running around an anti-gravity spaceship, but that's technology they've stolen. Negative thinking and feeling is not capable of creating anything new. Higher faculties to go up into other realms and get how this stuff is made, how it works in the physical universe, has to be brought back here from when you're out of your body. And then the understanding's brought here of how to make it work. Not the other way around. You can't create anti-gravity, thinking as a physical being in a physical body, working with physical matter and make it work.
You just answered a question that somebody had on one of our presentations.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, the fact is you can't get away from who we, and what we really are. Ultimately, to be free as a free being and have true free will, you have to want to be a co-creator with the source behind all life. That is not a tyrant. The way the universe was set up in lower dimensions, where the experiment of evil was put in place, good and bad, the devil, the tempter, and all that stuff, these were just beings who propped themselves up as the source behind all life, who ran the lower dimensions where the dual current runs. They demand worship, give everything to them, and then they never give anything back, really. That's slavery on a spiritual level. The real source never requested that, required it, or even asked for it. And even it had to change at the source. And the beings that run the mechanics of the universe had to change at the source in order to begin this process of retiring evil as an experiment in the lower dimensions, because something far superior has been brought into creation to take its place. And who are we to tell the source it cannot change its perceptions or change what it does or why? That's just vanity, spiritual arrogance, to think that, you know, we're going to tell the supreme source of all things where to get off with itself, what to do with itself, and that it can't change. Well, of course it can. If we can go back to that source and deliver new ways of insights of doing things from all the billions of lives we've lived, which is our real function, then it becomes aware of new ways of doing things from us, not the other way around. We are made of exactly the same energy as that supreme source itself, identical, like a drop out of it, this pure energy, and we're a drop in a mighty ocean of it, individualized. Faculties all work on different levels of the spherical being. That's what we were, that's how we are, the image of that source, not this. They got that all wrong on Earth. This is not what's like the source. That thing above your head is what's like the source that runs these experiments. So I want to put that out, and then maybe if you want, we can go on a little journey and wrap the show up. So I do realize that some ways I say some of these things in previous shows, but I always say them a little differently each time.
Yes, you do.
And there's a little more depth to them because things are being sped up.
And you add a little additional nuance too, I think, that helps with more explanation or with more understanding.
What I'm sharing with you and with the listeners is telepathic. It is not psychic. I don't work with the positive and negative lower energies at all. I leave them where they are. I have different bodies. I'm living different planes, and they all are where they're supposed to be. But myself as the Atma running all of that, including this, is the co-creator with the source. And when getting people aware that they are that, and that's their purpose for existing, when they begin to remember and have insight into things that have been taken from them without their consent prior to this lifetime, then that process becomes irreversible. Because eventually they're going to go back to that source they came from with all the lives of their experience, and they're going to have an insight they can share that is uniquely their own. And it helps change things. It helps the source behind all life become more enlightened, become wider in its scope and potential of understanding how to run the lower dimensions differently than it has before. That's our purpose. We're not supposed to be stuck in a body on Earth reincarnating over. We're supposed to be returning daily, going on these journeys and being aware of our participation in the multidimensional universe. And I'm speaking to everybody on the planet, without exception. I mean, everyone. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're presidents or royal elite families or hidden classified government or space program or any of it. I don't care what race they are, whether they're human or reptilian or grays or mantis or this or that or the other thing, because the only way those physical forms run is if an Atma's running them, or they just sit there like a vegetable. Brains do not run themselves, ever. They don't. They're machines, they're devices that have to have something pushing the buttons and getting it to work. Emotions don't come from the physical life you were born with. The mental capabilities don't come from the brain. They come from a higher form that you're also running as an Atma. It's important to know this, or remember it, or begin to remember it, because at the core of what the Atma is a core directive. Take all the negativity and the negative beings and their misuse of science and subconscious minds and implanting terror in people so they will not remember, because if you remember, we'll eat you alive again, kind of thing, which is what's at the base of those programs, to keep people from leaving their body to remembering, because they're terrified of it. Underneath it all, they're just terrified of knowing the truth. You can't blame them. But there's a part of the core of a being that eventually in eternity, it has in it the capability to be dominant over any form of negativity, beings in and out of bodies of any kind of negativity, or technology on any world or any dimension. Ultimately, this sphere has the same capability as the source over those things that were created below it. When that being starts to recover this, it starts to take command over subconscious negative stuff. It starts to ignore it. It no longer feeds it. You start getting this nervous system. I'm terrified. There's going to be a great meteor. It's going to kill us all any day now. And then, wait a minute. I'm not going to feed my energy into that.
Yeah.
Made my nervous system feel terrible.
Yeah.
And then people focus in it, and then they start thinking about it, and they start imagining in a negative way, and they're being drained of that proper use of the imagination, out with all the other negative things. So as we start to pull that back of free will, we don't choose to put our energies there, no matter what the stimulation is.
Yes.
And over time, you begin to get stronger and quicker at it.
Yes,
right?
I do. Yes, definitely. It's awesome.
So that means you become the co-creator with the source of your own recovery, experientially,
Yes.
not just a bunch of words.
Right.
So let's go on a journey. We do this by putting the body in the trance state we call sleep. It's the same thing you all do with your body every night, like an expert, but without perhaps having much consciousness of the fact that you're doing this, kind of unconsciously. When you lay the body down without giving it a second thought, oh my God, I gotta go sleep now. And then you identify with the body, so when you come back in the morning, you go, oh, I'm awake. I didn't remember a thing. Oh yeah, I had this roller coaster dream, and I was flying through the air. Oh yeah, big deal. Forget about that. And they actually bringing back a little bit of what they were doing when they weren't in the body, but they may not be conscious of it. And they're not trained from birth, growing up, to exercise higher faculties. The brain they've grown up with is not flexible. It doesn't have any openness to receive higher faculties from their own self in a higher way through a physical life they have. So why, when you're an adult, would you think it's comfortable or easy to leave your body? Most people they just have heard of it. They don't understand it. I ask people to imagine someone they love and respect or grateful they're in their life. It can be a person, place, or thing, but something that makes them kind of warm or smile inside, whatever that is. And then I ask them to take several deep breaths. And when they exhale, all they're doing is imagining putting all their fear of the future about bodies, how long they live, eternity, where they live or they don't, mates, and children, and this and that, taxes and governments, who's lying to who, and put it all aside. maybe in a computer disk or a DVD or some computer program somewhere in your imagination. You're just putting that stuff aside, which you do every night when you put the body to sleep. You're not aware of any of that. So we're doing this now. You would close your eyes, of course. You could be laying down or sitting in a chair. And you're just not going to take any of your fear about anything, just for now, with you on this journey. This is an act of true free will. It is the correct utilization of your imagination. And that is your ability to see as a being into the grand multidimensional universe and know things with certainty, not speculation, no fear, no doubt. But you need to have your eyes closed, generally, I think, where it's easy to be distracted. When your eyes are closed, they are not working. They are designed with lenses to pick up light from outside and interpret it. When they're closed, they are off. Make no mistake about this. And when they are off, the brain connected to it is also off. Therefore, when you begin to see in your imagination what we do and where we go as we do it, as I describe it, something other than your brain is seeing and experiencing what it is we're doing. Be aware of this fact. What we're doing, which you do every night, is you're causing the pineal gland in the center of the brain, through which you run the body and control it, to secrete serotonin, make melatonin, chemicals which put the body in automatic, in a sleep state, in a trance state, working well, breathing, blood working, heart pumping, everything's fine. And then the white core of your being, which is the center of the spherical nature of your true self, connects an energy kind of link to it. It's not a gold cord or a silver cord people have heard of. It can't be broken by anything in the lower worlds. And it actually run this body on automatic while you're gone exploring the universe every night. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful to recover even a small part of what it is you're doing every night when you're out of your body? How enlightening would that be? Long before the body dies. This is what we're after in these journeys. It's easy to imagine a waterfall. It's easy to imagine a beautiful golden sandy beach. We all do it, take it for granted. Most people don't really realize what it is they're doing. Why should they? They're not brought up on a planet where that's taught to anyone. You can imagine a beautiful hummingbird, colorful wings, hovering a foot in front of your face, looking eyes to eyes right into you, speaking to you. You can hear it say, "You are welcome to the recovery of hidden truth. It's yours by right. Don't be fooled." And it flies off. But before it flies off, it flies back. And now you see a spherical form of being up above this hummingbird running it. But when you look up in this imagination, there's your physical body. You look up and you see a sphere hovering above your own head. This is you. It's easy to imagine being in the atmosphere above where you live, in the sky, hovering, not as a body, but as a sphere of energy. It has a white core, and it runs through the entire spectrum, from white to orange to yellow to green to blue to lavender to violet, with golden energy flowing around it. And each layer of color has a number of these teardrop-shaped, self-effulgent, self-luminous lights. These are higher faculties of being. They store memory, other lives on different planes. This is who you really are. Just because you've been forced to forget it somewhere in your past does not mean it is not true. When you're in the atmosphere, you can look down through the roof of where you are and see yourself sitting there in the trance state called sleep, your body, or laying down. And when you look around you, you see there are other spheres of energy hovering around you in a circle. And I'm there. And there's a friend of mine named Ambassador Torellian from the Sayres race. He is an Atma too. He's not from Earth. He had a human body like ours, more strands than we have in the DNA. And they did what's called immortalization of their bodies almost 1 billion years ago, a little over that. That didn't mean that they took the body and made it live to be 36 years old for 1 billion years. They dematerialized the structure of their DNA and stored it in one of those teardrops in one of their layers of their being. And out of the primordial, omnipresent energy that is not nuclear in nature, that supports the entire multidimensional universe, out of that came all that exists now. And they are still that, and so is each being running a body the same. None of us originated in the physical universe as people understand it on Earth. We aren't made up of matter. We're not made up of protons or nucleons or electrons. The physical body, matter, genomes, and DNA are. That which runs it and animates it and causes it to even function is not made up of any of that. It predates it. It's easy to imagine being in space, hovering above the planet Earth. Everyone's seen this before in shots of the Hubble telescope or the space shuttle. And you can see Earth as it is, and the moon circling it in real time from satellites as well that have camera capability. And in space, you've been shown pictures where it looks like all of space is a black void with planets and stars and moons and galaxies hovering in this black void. But as the Atma, you hovering as a sphere in this space, you don't need oxygen. Radiation won't affect you. You don't feel heat or cold. You are not part of the time-space molecular or time-rate molecular universe. You are an Atma, soul, an energy being that cannot be destroyed or changed by any force or power. It is not made of atoms, but it runs atoms. And you're floating in this void, and when you look at it as the Atma, you see that it is made up of a white light with a golden tinge. This, what is called dark matter that exists in everywhere in space between planets and suns and galaxies, is a type of energy. It's a conscious, living force. It is not an individual like us. It is an omnipresent field of energy that supports all life, and all planets, and all galaxies, and all dimensions, and all doorways between dimensions, etc. And we communicate telepathically with this force, and we move and live and have our being in it. Always have, always will. We are meant to run bodies as tools of experience because they are made out of the matter of a particular dimension. And when we're running them, we can have perceptics and perceptions and smell and taste and all the things that make up that reality. And then from there, we can learn how to create better ways of doing things so that the lower dimensions, eventually, physical worlds, emotional worlds, mental worlds, become mirrors of the worlds that exist beyond the void. This was the original plan that has never worked out yet. It's underway now for the first time in a unique way. The experiment of evil in the lower dimensions is being retired like the dinosaur. And it's being gradually replaced by something that motivates all beings to only create that which will be of an uplifting, constructive benefit to all life. To do that, the Atma, which is capable of it, must be aware of all life that exists in the grand multidimensional creation. To play in it all, you have to respect it all, or you cannot play in it. That's as simple as it is. It's a universal law above physical matter, which is love and do as you will. But the love part, which is really respect, comes first. You're in space, and there's Terrellian, and we're hovering in a circle of beings around him as a focal point so that we stay focused on gaining something constructive from this journey. The universe is vast, and you can get lost in experiences that won't benefit you toward recovering who you are. In this journey, let's go visit a ship that is stationed in the ice rings, which make up the rings of Saturn in our solar system. To do this, you're going to see that there are a number of people not from Earth that begin to appear as spheres of light, as spherical Atmas. And some of them are master teachers that are considerably more advanced than the gurus and teachers that have been on Earth. Some of these have been on Earth in the past and carrying out different missions. They look like you. They're more experienced. They don't have subconscious minds. And they do have, most of them, a physical body somewhere that they've immortalized. Not like the Say-Rays, but they've actually created a form they like that they keep unaged at the same age while they carry out certain missions. This is just how they understand how to control the genomes, the switches on the DNA. One of them is called Master Ramu. He has a crystal staff made of quartz he holds in his right hand. It's a tool. You'll see a physical form. It's made of energy. It looks like his physical body wherever it is. And it's sitting somewhere in the trance state, probably in a meditation state that we call sleep. And he's here as the true self, as an Atma, hovering above this form that has this crystal quartz staff in his hand. 6 feet tall, has a kind of cross on top with a vertical oval with a hole in it, an ancient Egyptian symbol for eternity that did not originate on Earth either. One of the other beings is Master Opelum, or Master Teacher Opelum. He's the leader of an Oceanian race of humans, very much like humans on Earth, but they have pale blue skin and little gills under their neck, 3 little slits. You can't even see unless they lift their neck up. They evolved on a mostly water-covered world long ago in galactic history to breathe underwater or on land. Yet the genomes that make up their genetic structure are so similar to human beings, we could actually mate with them. They're beautifully, highly evolved beings. They have the highest crystalline-based science in our galaxy. And they were the original founding sponsors of the Galactic Interdimensional Alliance of Free Worlds a very, very long time ago. And that was inspired by people like Terrellian, Ambassador Terrellian of the Say-Rays race. So here's Terrellian, one of us. We get our genomes for the genetic bodies we have now from them originally. They were responsible for seeding human and humanoid and other bipedal life and bringing it up, creating the genomes for those bodies that Atmas could run, and then getting them cultures developed to spacefaring capability, and then the Say-Rays backed away, disappeared for a very long time to see what everyone would do with it. And we know what everyone's done with it. It's not a pretty picture. So they're back in the scene now, recently, to help tutor or correct this experiment of evil that's gone so wrong, because they themselves went through a consciousness change that motivated them in this direction for the first time. And it didn't originate with them either. you're going to see a number of beings appear in a circle, over 100 men and women. You'll see the Atmas hovering above physical forms that appear masculine or feminine, different dresses, different skin colors, some violet eyes, golden luminous eyes, red eyes, blue, emerald green, all kinds of different things that represent member races of the Galactic Alliance that are going on this journey to see how we experience it, beings who are coming from Earth. When you look out in space and they're all doing it, you see a white light with a golden edge to it, radiating in between us, Earth, and the moon, which you can see below you, Earth with its polar ice caps, and the moon circling around it with a pockmarked with meteor hits and craters, no atmosphere, doesn't turn on its axis. And then you look out into the depths of space beyond Earth, and you see a kind of a vortex open, and it looks like a blue-green water gently spinning clockwise. And there's a tunnel with a little bit of a violet light running down the center of it. And Terrellian moves off into it. And all of us in a group circling around him, like planets around a sun, move into this tunnel. And we're swept away at tremendous speed. And as you're looking through the side walls of this tunnel, which is transparent, you can see thousands of stars spinning past us. And then you see the opening on the other end. And in short time, we're out the other side, and you can see us approaching the planet Saturn. Huge gas giant with rings around it, made of large chunks of ice. And down in the upper level of the outer ring, you begin to see a long cylindrical spacecraft. It's over a mile long. It is of a blue-gray metal, slightly flattened on the top, with bridge windows and control on one end. And if you get around the other side of the ship, you can see it has an identical bridge control room on the other end. And around just above the circumference of it are these horizontal, oval observation windows that go completely around the circumference of the ship to the bridge front windows. And you can see that we're moving down towards the central section of this mile-long spacecraft. And you can see that it has a blue glow radiating it around the hull that keeps it safe from these chunks of ice. Some of them are the size of skyscrapers, or bigger. To make up a relatively thin layer, which makes up the rings of Saturn. And you're going to find that we are moving down right through the hull of the central section of this ship, passing harmlessly through it because we're Atmas, we're not matter like this ship is. And you're going to find yourself in a very large chamber, lit with semi-spherical dome lights around the top of this huge, like a hangar bay. And parked in neat rows, several dozen, are 30-foot wide Galactic Alliance scout craft. They have a pale blue-gray metal, kind of a cobalt blue glass-like curved top, 3 strut legs holding them up, and they're parked and they're not on. They're off. And you can see a kind of a moving conveyor belt running down the length of a football field size area in this launch bay. There is no launch bay doors on this ship. Ships of this nature are anti-gravity powered. The little scout craft, 30 feet across, change their molecular time rate up enough to pass right through the metal hull, out into space, and they enter the same way. You can see a triangular opening at the far end of this moving conveyor belt. You can see some people riding on it like an escalator, parallel to the ground. And they disappear in a wide opening that's got a golden-sided world pyramid-type opening, and they're on their way somewhere. And we are hovering in this chamber, Torellian and all of us, and the 100 people in a circle around us, Master Ramu, Master Opalum, these master teachers. And we're going to find we're suddenly moving right through the wall above this pyramid opening. And you're going to come out in a observation lounge type area near about a third of the way from the bridge control area. And you're going to see a big chamber with blue, lush carpeted floor and little blue glass top tables and egg-shaped white chairs with blue cushions. You can see several hundred of the ship's personnel, human and humanoid from different planets, who are here, standing in different places to greet us. They know we're coming. And you will experience yourself in Torellian hovering in this near the ceiling. It's like 30 feet high, looking down on these people. And then you find yourself, you have a physical body walking on the plush carpet that looks like you, about 36, perfectly healthy. And when you look up and smile, you see the Atma, the real you, hovering above this form you've created to greet these fellow beings. And you can see a man and a woman walk up to each one of you, one of the ship's personnel, and then greet you with a hand over the chest and a slight nod of their head. And then you hear them speak to you telepathically. They introduce their names to you. They know who you are. They know you're from Earth. They're delighted to see you simply because what you're doing right now, they never expected any Earth person to be able to do, considering how they were raised. And yet, here we are doing it. So it's surprising for them that people so suppressed can still do this once they become aware of it. They're learning from us, and they have a great deal to teach us as well. Find yourself mingling amongst the ship's personnel and have your own experience with them for a few minutes in silence. For some of you, they'll lead you by the hand over to one of these horizontal, oval, curved windows, and you'll see out in space the ice rings circling the giant planet Saturn. This ship from the Galactic Alliance is stationed here permanently for now to help with the coming unraveling of subconscious nonsense that must be done for the people of planet Earth. They are all very highly trained. They know what they're doing. They're all very kind. They actually get uplifted, removing subconscious implants and programs of a misdirecting nature from fellow beings who are stuck on Earth. You who are on this journey, if you ask them to help you when you're out of your body at night, and your body's in the trance state called sleep, they will do this. But you must ask, free will. They're telepathic, but that doesn't mean they eavesdrop on your private thoughts or your privacy on Earth. They don't. But they will communicate with you telepathically for your own benefit, to help you or guide you to recover that which you've been made to forget. Then you can see your body standing in this plush blue carpet suddenly dissolve into light and be withdrawn into the white core of your being hovering above it. This is the real you. And when you look out from the white core of your being, you can see all the ship's personnel. You can see Torellian and myself and Gail and others and 100 other people that came with us. All of them are specially trained master teachers. Many of them, if not all of them, know how to remove subconscious programs or get you to voluntarily give them up They only work with beings to help them have their own experience of this recovery. They don't do it for you. You have to co-create it, giving them permission to help co-create this with you. And then you can recover what you once knew in a way that will actually make your physical life on Earth more balanced than it is now. Find yourself all of a suddenly, say thank you to these beings, ask for their assistance if you wish. Find yourself hovering above this giant cylindrical spaceship, the blue halo around it. It's one of the smaller vehicles. It's over a mile long. And you can see some of these scout craft now moving in at an angle from two sides of the ship from space, glowing with their own pale blue light, and they hum down and pause in front of the midsection of the hull and then pass right through it. And you can see right through the hull and see that they change their molecular time rate to solid matter or to a slower time rate, and then they land on the platform next to the other ships. When you look at the void of space above planet Saturn, you don't see a black void. You see a white energy field, the golden flakes floating through it, glittering, moving between everything. The void of space is full of living energy, connects everything together, supports everything. And then you see a tunnel appear out in space, like blue-green water whirling in an opening, a horizontal tunnel. It's not violent, it's just a slow-moving, looks like water, glowing in space, but it isn't water. And you find Torellian dart into it, and all of us follow. And in an instant, you're coming out the other end of that interdimensional doorway, connects 2 points in space-time through a conduit that is not space-time, through an energy that is not made of matter. And they're hovering around Torellian, looking down on planet Earth, the polar ice caps, and then you see that field change. And now you're looking on an Earth in the same place that has no polar ice caps. It has a large continent centered over the equator from the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere. And it has a green, glowing, crescent-shaped beach all the way down in the middle and bottom of that continent, about a third of the way up from the South Pole. And you're drawn to it. When you look to the left, you see the moon. The moon circling this Earth is full of oxygen and atmosphere, clouds and rivers and lakes, 5 domed cities on its surface, 3 golden-sided pyramids with quartz crowns in each. And as it turns on its axis, because this moon does, you can see another large dome city in a mountainous area on the back side. And this circles Earth turning on its axis. This Earth is in a parallel dimension in a 3rd level up of higher molecular time rate than the world you're used to. Because of that, you don't see it. Your physical eyes and senses and ears are not tuned to perceive a higher molecular time rate, which is why if you looked out in space, you would see a black void between all things, because physical human eyes are not capable of seeing higher frequency of light. The Atma, the real you, of course, can do this. And you find yourself with your bare feet sinking down into this emerald green sand on this half-moon base-shaped emerald luminous beach in front of a giant tropical trees, giant prehistoric-looking ferns. And the beach itself, when you look at these and pick up in your hand these little stones that make up this beach, they're actually pure, polished emerald crystals, and they're glowing individually. You can feel an energy go into your fingers. You can feel it run up your feet, and it's soothing. And it's beginning to remind you that the feet you're feeling in this sand is an energy projection from the white core of your being. And when you look up smiling, and it's you, you see the white core of your being smiling back at you. They're both the same. They're both you. And this green energy moves up through your smiling face and up a beam of light into the white core of your being. And then this green energy is channeled out to some of the teardrop shapes that make up your green layer and turns them on. There are many of them, so we're turning on a few now that are important. And these have to do with recall and remembering as the Atma, not a body. And then that body simply dissolves into energy and is absorbed back into the white core of your being. This is a gift from this parallel dimension, and we're not going further into that today. And you find yourself hovering in space, looking down on this alternate Earth with no polar ice caps, and you can still see the green crescent-shaped beach all the way down there, glowing. There's something new in your being. You can see Turelian hovering in the center and all of us circling around him, Master Ramu, the Oceanian leader, Opelum, 100 other people from the Galactic Alliance, men and women, and the spherical nature of their true self hovering above these forms, you see. And then they depart. They simply vanish. And there's the few of us around Turelian. And when you look down on this Earth, covered with oceans, no polar ice caps, it changes. And now you can see the Earth you're used to, and the moon with its craters and no atmosphere. And then you find yourself hovering above where you live in the atmosphere on Earth, smiling, and you find yourself as a spherical being hovering above your physical body, in a chair or lying on a bed, smiling kindly down on that physical form. And then you send this green gift and a white light with a gold tinge surrounding it. The experience of this journey down into that brain, out into the brain cells, out through the pineal gland, lighting up certain rods and cones in it, like the physical eyes, but these are tuned to frequencies and other realities. And then it goes out through your brain, out through your body, and flows as a white light with a gold tinge in every direction, out into the planet Earth, through the core of the world, out the other side, and it continues off into space, uninterrupted. This energy is imparting something to you for your enlightening benefit, and it's also moving through you by your co-creative free will involvement for the benefit of others. And then when you're ready, open your eyes. Now, when you open your eyes, both of them at once, it becomes biscopular, which means that basic thing is cut off. You become more the physical being so that you don't bump into walls and walk across streets and get spaced out and all that. But the memory of the experience, it takes a little time to unravel. And you can turn your mic on now, Gail. It takes a little time for the awareness, the confidence with such things as bilocating out of the physical body or direct projection. When we go on bilocation, it means you're moving in a journey through a portal to another area of time-space. Direct projection, you're simply here one moment, you're in some other reality the next, instantly. We use both methods in our getting around the multiverse. So I would recommend, as I do in the end of each show, because this is recorded and I'll send it to Gail and Gail will put it up on her YouTube channel, that you play back this show when you will not be disturbed. You can put on a set of headphones and go through it again, because you'll find details of things and greater experience and beings talking to you, and some things that I didn't even say will appear. And go through it again, because you'll be bringing back more of a conscious awareness recorded into this consciousness you grew up with on Earth. about these experiences that you could not have created in your brain if you tried. And then they become yours. So I want to leave you with that. Gail, you got anything you want to add or any questions? Or
No, I would just encourage everyone to do the journey again, because that's what I do, and it does make a big difference. You remember more, you see more. It's just a wonderful experience.
I have written 2 books that are published. This is the Sayre's Agenda, and it does have Ambassador Trelling in it in some part. And it's about that ship that's been described and what it looks like. So you get a better visual of it right on the cover. This is a book about, it's like an interdimensional doorway. As you read through it, what you'll receive visually will help you recover the ability to see how these beings not from Earth have changed and how they're focusing on this planet now in a different way. And there's a technique section in the back that is designed with a separate technique for the prologue and all 29 chapters that you can use to help unravel more of what you uncover along the way. As you go through it and after you read it, you wake up being on another planet with some people from out of town, as I call it. And you understand some of it, and others it seems like really intriguing and you want to know more. You go to that chapter that best resembles the revelation of that hidden truth from an off-world perspective and use the technique there and work with it. And this book is called The Emerald Doorway. And as you can see on the cover, it has the structure, the spherical structure of the Atma, the real you, soul, hovering there, which has come down from a dimension above the void to introduce this master teacher, Ramu, with his staff. He's hovering on an anti-gravity disk outside of this ship, which is Kalim's ship, and he's introducing them to the Ancient One, as it's called in this book. This is what the source looks like. Much larger than us, and each being hovering above you don't see above these bodies looks just like it. They're being introduced to this for the first time. And this is 100,000 years ago, after the poles flipped on Earth, destroying major continents and rising new ones from the seafloor. So this is more about an ancient history not known on Earth that involved extraterrestrials and how these beings were being trained back then. So that comes forward into today about how those influences have been on Earth long ago, where they come from. So I wanted to make that point. And then when I send this recording to Gail, it will have links to the 4 websites I have. Right, Gail?
Right.
Parallel Times, the main one, then Total Spectrum Publishing, Total Spectrum Productions, and Total Spectrum Media are all support sites. So when you go to them and see these books, nothing's sold on these sites. They all link back to Parallel Time, and then they link to trustworthy retailers. So if you need to get the books, you can, from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or whatever. And those are sold because it's the only way I have on this planet of getting them to you. These kinds of things we do on these journeys and radio shows, there's no money involved. The videos of shows I've done, conferences I've conducted, are there at the website. They're free. There's no charge for them. So if you explore the website, you're going to get a great deal awakened, a lot more about what you were made to forget. And I will leave your listeners with that.
And it's a wonderful experience. You'll enjoy the books and you'll enjoy the websites. They're wonderful.
Thanks, Gail, for hosting the show. And I wish everybody pleasant dreams and great awakening in a more balanced way than you ever conceived before.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'll stop the recording now.